We haven't spoken with this gentleman since prior to the draft. He's the Pro Football Focus lead NFL draft analyst, Trevor Sikkema, back here on the Rich Eisen Show in advance of preseason football. Good to see you, Trevor. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Rich. Plenty of things for us to talk about now with it being August, so appreciate you having me on.
Real quick, has your hair moved since April?
The fact that you asked means that I'm doing a good enough job here, because it has,
it kind of matches your background a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it kind of has the same grooves as your background right there. Again, I'm sorry. I'm follically challenged. I just noticed these things, when they pop up on my screen. But excellent.
It's a little optical illusion there with the background and the hair. Hopefully you just see that. So maybe the hair can be even bigger since I have the background here, when people are just like, man, where does the background begin? Where does the hair stop? That's what I'm going for. So I appreciate you noticing.
That's exactly what it is. It's an optical illusion. Do you have any opinion on where you think Aiyuk fits best? Or just a sort of, I guess, stray out of the draft, if you will, lane for a little bit here, Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, I think he fits best with the 49ers, but obviously it seems like that's not going to be where he's going to be playing this year. And I get why. You look at all the contracts on the 49ers right now, that's without even Brock Purdy's contract, which is, of course, something that they have to think about down the road, probably in the not so distant future. And I think that goes into a lot of this. Now, if he's not going to play on the 49ers, then I think his best spot, obviously, like talent-wise, output-wise, is probably the Browns from what we've thought about right now, right? The hope is that Deshaun Watson this year looks a lot closer to Houston Texans Deshaun Watson than anything that we've seen in Cleveland. And if you are obviously able to keep Amari Cooper without having to trade him, depends if that's going to be in the deal or not, if that's going to be the case, you've got an incredible group of wide receivers for him to throw to, and it's going to be really tough to stop. Selfishly, though, as a draft guy, like you mentioned, I like New England, right? Look at New England's wide receivers right now. They're not exactly getting it done. They're one of the worst receiving corps in the NFL. You throw Brandon Aiyuk in there, now you get Drake May, a wide receiver one. You are doing what you need to do after you said, hey, we are going to stand pat at number 3 overall. We're not going to move. We're not going to take a king's ransom to trade back. We're going to take the quarterback. Well, it's not just that investment and that ability to stay there at number 3 to take the quarterback. You then, over the next couple of years, have made a commitment that you were going to make the team, the offensive line, the offensive coordinator, the pass catchers, good enough to where that investment is going to be worth it. Getting Brandon Aiyuk would be a good step forward in that direction.
Yeah. So I guess what's your opinion as we're getting ready for preseason football about the rookie class and how you think they're going to perform? Which guys stand out to you now that we're getting ready for actual football?
Well, not to, give you too much of a Michigan, pat on the back here with hyping them up, but it seems like J.J. McCarthy is going to be a lot of fun to watch this preseason, because it looks like Sam Darnold obviously is going to be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. We believed that was going to be the case. I didn't think that was going to change, but, McCarthy is somebody who I'm really looking forward to, because by all counts, he's been playing well in practice. Okay, it's against the twos, but now we get to see him against the ones a little bit. And even if it's against the twos in preseason, like, it's another team's backup player. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, how Jaden's in the mix with how much he's going to play this offseason in Washington with his connection with Cliff Kingsbury, what that chemistry is going to look like. And then, there's some talks with the Patriots going back to Drake May, like, hey, Joe Milton's looking better than Drake May. I don't know about all that. Joe Milton's been a pretty good practice quarterback at Michigan. He was a pretty good practice quarterback at Tennessee. It's a little bit different when we get in the game, but obviously I'm hoping the best for him. So I'd love to see him light it up. He's got one of the best arms in the NFL already, and we haven't even seen him play yet. We already know that from seeing the practice footage. So we'll see how it comes out in New England, but that's the one that I'm really looking forward to the most, is that battle in New England. Can any of those guys, usurp Jacoby Brissett, or who's really going to be getting a lot of those 2 reps of those rookie quarterbacks in New England?
Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus here on the Rich Eisen Show. Outside of the quarterbacks, tell me who else you think might be a finalist for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Give me your best case scenario going into this season right now.
I think I have to say Malik Neighbors, right? When you talk about wide receiver cores that just desperately needed an influx of talent. I mean, that was somebody who the second Malik Neighbors was drafted, and I love Malik Neighbors. He was one of my highest graded players that we had in this class. I said, okay, there's your wide receiver one. And it's not as desperate in New York as it was in New England when you look at their receiving core, but Malik Neighbors is absolutely that number one guy there. To me, they're going to feed that passing attack through him even as a rookie. You go back to an LSU wide receiver that people know very well, and Odell Beckham Jr., when he came in, he was able to hit the ground running in New York not too long ago. Not to make the easy parallels there, but I really do think that something like that, an over 1,000-yard season, a takeover type of a year for Malik Neighbors could be in the cards, because he was basically unguardable last year while in LSU's offense, and I feel like he's still going to be able to play at a very high level despite being a rookie. So he is somebody to watch for, because I think he is going to stuff the stat sheet this year.
So then give me another non-top 10 wide receiver. Give me, so we're taking Odunze, and we're taking Maserati Marv, and we're taking Neighbors out of the mix. Because second round wide receivers are the ones that are getting pizzade around these parts too, or wide receivers like Aiyuk taken in the 20s. What do you got for me there? Front of that curve, Trevor. What do you got?
I think that, like, now that I'm kind of thinking of some of those guys that weren't in the top 10, the obvious guys, if Brandon Aiyuk gets traded, obviously I think Ricky Pearsall becomes an option, but it's such a crowded room with the 49ers. So a lot of people liked him, and I did as well. I think he's going to be able to stand out right away. I just don't think he'll have the volume with it. So the guys who I think would have the best chance volume-wise, Keon Coleman in Buffalo is one who I think could be their X receiver. Now, I don't know if they're going to run that passing offense through them, right? Because they got some good tight ends there. I think Dalton Kincaid's probably going to get the lion's share of the offensive targets. You got Dawson Knox as well. I think they're going to get Khalil Shakir involved a lot, but Coleman still brings an element to the offense that when they say, like, hey, we need a go up and get it type of a guy. We need somebody in the end zone to be able to run a fade toward the pylon, go up and moss a cornerback. I think they're going to look Coleman's way. So perhaps they get a lot of those opportunities. He gets a lot of touchdowns. Maybe that's the case. Then Xavier Legette. I think health is the biggest thing for Legette, but they need him, man. I mean, and I know he's already a little bit banged up in camp, which I don't love, because he kind of dealt with a little bit of injuries throughout his career when he was at South Carolina. But if they get a full 17 games in a regular season from Xavier Legette, again, he's somebody that Dave Canales has to work that passing offense through. And I'm not saying that he is Mike Evans, but Dave Canales got to work with Mike Evans last year, got to see what it's like when a big, strong receiver can move a little bit better or have more explosiveness than defenses maybe are ready to defend against. And so some of Legette's best reps are similar in that regard. So I think Canales is going to have a couple of plays that he thought about with Mike Evans in mind last year in Tampa Bay, and he's going to be able to work those in with Xavier Legette to run that passing offense through him in Carolina. So Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, I think those are two guys that have a good chance to get a lot of volume, maybe to be a sleeper offensive rookie of the year pick.
Trevor Sikkema, NFL draft analyst, lead such analyst for Pro Football Focus here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm going to ask you a 2023 draft question now, okay? Not this past year's draft, last year's draft. Give me a player in his second year that someone should be drafting high in fantasy, or you think is going to have a high volume, big time year, breakout or not, from last year's draft. This is year 2 now for them, Trevor.
Yes.
What do you got for me on that front?
The obvious one
Jameer Gibbs, take him out. Let's take
Jameer Gibbs. Right.
Okay.
I had to say that. I had to say that right off the bat.
Because otherwise they're like, what is Trevor doing?
Right.
Too much pomade has seeped into his skull. But what do you got for me outside of Gibbs? Because he would be one of my, I'd have to consider taking him in the first round of my fantasy draft for sure. Yeah, even high, very high draft choice. But give me somebody year 2. Do you think could be a receiver? Could be a it could be a tight end, could be a running back. Who do you think is going to have a high volume breakout this year?
Well, I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and I'll go with him, Dalton Kincaid. I genuinely think that Dalton Kincaid could very well be the target leader in Buffalo's offense. And you got to think about Buffalo's situation too. It was an offense that's been able to put up a lot of points. Obviously, Josh Allen, MVP caliber quarterback to him, but they certainly are going to be looking for someone to take a lion's share of the targets now with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis gone on that team. So it's got to go a lot of different directions. They were already trying to get Dalton Kincaid cooking and into the lineup last year. I think he takes a massive step forward this year, and kind of the way that we saw Trey McBride the year prior, take a step forward with Arizona, where it was like, hey, remember, this guy was a monster, and he was somebody that his team in college had to get the ball to very quickly and often. I think that's going to still be the case with Dalton Kincaid. I think another factor that goes into high potential fantasy production with him is the Buffalo Bills defense is not going to be what it's been over the last 3-4 years. They've had to move on from a lot of veterans, a lot of core guys who were able to make that defense really strong. Now, I don't think they're going to be terrible. I think it's going to be a good team because Sean McDermott's a good coach. But I don't think they're going to be holding teams to as low of a output as they have been in years past. So that is going to what? Ramp up the demand to score more points. I think that is going to improve what the projections are for Dalton Kincaid. To me, he could be one of the top fantasy tight ends in the league this year.
I like that one. I got one for you. What do you think? And even though he's second on the depth chart in Cincinnati, what about Chase Brown? What about him?
I love Chase Brown.
Right?
He was somebody who was one of my top breakout players for this season. And the reason why is because, okay, you look at what Joe Mixon has been over the last couple of years for them. Maybe the efficiency's kind of gone down a little bit for Joe Mixon, but the volume has always been high. They have always liked to run their offense kind of through what their running backs were able to do, not just on the ground, but also in the passing game. Okay, you think about Zach Moss. All right, maybe if Zach Moss is RB1 for them on early downs, Chase Brown had the highest receiving grade of their backs in the second half of last season. So that he's at least going to start to get those third down opportunities to show what he could do as a receiver. He's incredibly athletic. Then you pair that with what he did in his final year when he was at Illinois. One of the most rushing yards in the country. I mean, they could not get this guy the ball enough. And when I kind of looked into their background, not just him, but also his brother, Sidney Brown, I love just where they come from, their roots, their work ethic, their mentality. These are two dudes that you absolutely want to bet on. So Chase Brown, no doubt about it. You might be spoiling it for some people who haven't had their leagues yet, who are hoping to get him as a big-time sleeper. But I think Chase Brown could be the RB1 in Cincinnati during the second half of the season.
I don't know how I'm breaking the eggs, man. I'm just trying to make the omelet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to get people smarter. That just dispense information, Trevor. You know what I mean? I can't concern myself with ruining things for other people. I just trying to make people smarter. What does PFF have going on right now? What are they?
Man, you speak of fantasy stuff. I mean, our fantasy stuff is in full swing right now. We got a lot of really great tools for you. Anybody else who, maybe your Chase Brown sleeper was ruined here, but we can find you another sleeper with a lot of our great tools. And if you don't have a PFF subscription, PFF 25 gets you 25% off right now. So go check it out.
Okay, so there's all those rankings for that sort of thing. It's a perfect one-stop shopping. And so, who do you think's defensive rookie of the year? Who do you think's that?
Ooh. Who's going to get defensive rookie of the year?
Yeah, man. Come on now. What do you think?
I think it's
because it wasn't that as we all know, it was offense galore. Dallas Turner being the first guy taken defensively. I look there was that run on corners in the first round. What do you got?
I think that certainly like Quinyon Mitchell could be in this conversation. Terran Arnold, I think, could be in this conversation. You know what's actually going in Terran Arnold's favor if a corner's going to win it? We all know you got to have interceptions, right? Like, you got to have interceptions if you're going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's the stat that the voters love, even though we think that there are better stats to judge how you do as a corner. You got to get those interceptions. Terran Arnold was able to get 5 interceptions last year. He's a ball hawk. He loves that. 2, like, he's a great personality, right? If Terran starts playing well, he's going to be in the spotlight, not only because of his personality, like I just mentioned, but also Detroit. Detroit's a team that we're going to be talking about a ton. So if any corner is going to win it, I think I'd bet on Terran Arnold. But the player that I would say has the best chance to win it is actually Laiatu Latu, the pass rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. And the reason why I say it is because I think that his ability to get into the backfield as quickly as he does is going to improve a Colts defensive line that got a lot of pressures last year, or got a lot of sacks last year, but not as many pressures, not as clean of pass rush win percentage. So it shows you there's a lot of health on the defensive line, but this is somebody who could be a finisher for them. So there is a world where Laiatu Latu could even get 8 to 12 sacks as a rookie because the rest of that defensive line is at a veteran spot and playing so well. His pass rush moves are well beyond their years. So he would actually be the player that I think is the favorite because he's going to be able to get those statistics up more than I think some of these other players that could play well. They just might not get the stats that Latu is going to get this year.
Trevor Sikkema at Tampa Bay Trey, for those who want to shout at him. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
All right. Check out Pro Football Focus, of course, as well. That's Trevor Sikkema. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.